Planning Commission meeting for Riverdale City. All of the planning commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Herman. And at this point, we, as far as our agenda is concerned, we would open for public comment. At this point in the meeting, the public comment that we're seeking is not in relation to the agenda items that we'll be discussing the public hearings, but would be open for additional concerns and comments from the public regarding other issues outside of what's on the agenda today. So if there is anyone that would like to address the Planning Commission on non-agenda items, we would welcome you to come forward. Seeing none, we will move on to our next item on the agenda, presentation and reports, community development update. Mr. Cooper, what's going on?
Thank you, Chair. Just bring your attention to an invite that went out today for the Back 9 ribbon cutting up on Freeway Park Drive. That was finished a week or so ago, and so we'll join the chamber to welcome them to Riverdale. It's basically a membership-based internal golf simulator, so that'll be fun for those who like to golf. Everything else is typical updates. There's nothing really new to announce, nothing that you don't already know about, so I'd be happy to take any questions if you had any.
I saw the other one on America First, the topping.
Oh, right, I forgot about that. Yeah, I think that's the 9th.
The 9th.
Yep. So join us for that if you can. Thank you for that reminder.
Okay. All right. Next would be our consent items. Consideration to approve the 2026 Planning Commission meeting schedule, and also consideration of the meeting minutes from September 23rd for the work session and regular meeting, and November 25th work session and regular meeting for that. Any discussion on those items? If none, we would welcome a motion.
We move that a motion be recommended for approving those items that was just discussed. The 2026 Planning Commission meeting schedule, considering of meetings minutes from September 23rd, 2025 work session, September 23rd, 2025 regular meeting, November 25th, 2025 work session, November 25th, 2025 work session.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next would be our action items. Were you going to go over the information first, or do we want to open the public hearing and then have you present?
Why don't I present and then
we can open the
open
meeting.
the public hearing, take comment, and then I'll be happy to answer any
All right,
questions after
perfect. So we will proceed with information regarding the proposed text amendments to Riverdale City Code Title 10, Chapter 22, Planned Residential or Unit Development.
that. Okay, thank you very much. Michelle will pull up just the language that we're proposing. In your packet, you have the current code reference, which is being struck or proposed to be struck in its entirety, with a new section being added in its entirety. And so we can go over that as she gets that up. So the action before you tonight is to review and take public comment on this text amendment. The proposals will replace and modernize the city's existing planned residential unit development code section 1021. And it'll replace it with a comprehensive planned development ordinance that accommodates residential but also commercial and mixed-use development, and better aligning itself with the Utah State Code. This current PRUD ordinance was drafted in 2007, and there were a couple amendments made to it in 2009 and 2012. And so, holistically speaking, it is a little stale when you look at other cities across the state. And as I mentioned in the work session, it reflects only residential projects. So it doesn't give any flexibility to new types of developments that are happening in this state, mixed use developments, commercial developments, things like that. And also the Utah State code that governs municipal land use is also changing. And so these amendments are meant to coincide with that, as I mentioned. One of the most important things this does is that it gives the framework in which the Planning Commission, in most cases, will use to determine whether or not a plan development is appropriate in accordance with the general plan and it's the development's own stated goals. It gives the city the ability to deal with, from a code perspective, a development that may not have traditional side streets, that might need different types of setbacks or height regulations applied to it. So it gives the city flexibility to and a framework to approve things that may not be the letter of the law written in our current code, so to speak. There's a couple of reasons, and I think they're important to repeat. Again, our current our current PRUD framework is outdated. It's in some cases, it's more restrictive and conflicts with a base zone that it might overlay on. And so it causes confusion as we're looking at how to apply the base zone in the context of more restricted or regulations that conflict on a PRUD overlay. And then again, we're working with our consultant on the overall comprehensive Title X updates. So tonight's action, if it moves forward, is meant to slip into those. So we might have to tweak a few things once we get that 100% done, but this is meant to fold right into the other comprehensive updates that we're making to Title X. And so the City Council will take action on that in the future, and then based on your recommendation, we'll take action on this tonight and at a future date. So again, everything's meant to be compatible, even though this is before you a little bit prematurely as it relates to the rest of the Title X. Okay, so if we can get right into it, Michelle, if you don't mind scrolling to the red part. Okay, so this is broken down in a structure that's going to be consistent with the rest of our zoning code updates, with a well-defined purpose. So again, the purpose of a planned development is to fold in those large-scale developments that are being proposed that are residential but also commercial, mixed use in nature. Encourage quality environment and a unique sense of place. That's kind of fuzzy, squishy language, but it is important that we telegraph and broadcast these types of intentions as we look at these types of zone changes. 1B there is to encourage more efficient use of the land. That is becoming ever more important, given that we're a small city geographically. We're relatively built out, and so we're looking at ways that we can use our land in more efficient ways instead of monolithic building, more of a mixed use nature, and this code change allows for that. Going on to Section 2, applicability, I've restricted this to some of the zones. So you'll notice there that not all zones this would apply to. The RE15 and RE20, those are residential estate zones. It wouldn't be applicable there. It wouldn't be applicable to our RCP regionally planned zone, the R145, the R16, and the RMH1 zone. So those are the zones that are omitted. But the other zones generally allow for the minimum land that would be needed for this. And if you look down in 2B, that's actually, I noticed this morning, so I apologize. In 2B1 and 2, those are the minimum site areas that would be required for a plan development. They're actually backwards. So a minimum For a predominantly residential plan development would be 3 acres, and the minimum for a commercial or mixed use, which could include residential, would be 5 acres. That's why those zones, that's why this applies to the zones that I've described and not some of the zones that have smaller lots. The approval authority is important because the Utah State Code has changed what the land use authority can be in certain things, and so most things related to subdivisions, which PD would be a subdivision in most cases, it's relegated to the Planning Commission, and so you would be the final decision maker on most planned developments. And 2D is the relationship to the base zoning. This is important. Upon approval, the recorded PD development plan, so a plan that would accompany a plan development project, would supersede any conflicting zoning that would be at the base level. So if a PD overlay was applied to, let's say, a CP3 zone, then the development agreement that you all would approve would supersede the base zone of a CP3. Section 3, I won't go through all of these, but these are the design objectives for plan developments. This is a key element because, again, we want to give as much structure to the applicant and to the proposed project as we can while retaining the flexibility to be adaptive to market conditions and other things like that. And so there's some language there that talks about arranging buildings harmoniously with open spaces, circulation, and parking, and things like that. The internal street system should be designed for efficiency and safe movement. So these are just general guidelines that would help guide the applicant. The actual design elements and the development requirements are listed afterwards. You can go to the next page, please. Thanks. So Section 4 is development requirements. You have to be an owner, of course, to have a plan development approved, or there has to be some approved representation. That's typical of what we do now. I did include in 4B a 20% open space requirement, and so this would be a requirement to have 20% of the overall site be retained as open space. So that could be private open space, public open space, common area, things like that. And that just ensures that we're not just packing homes into areas, but we're creating neighborhoods that would allow for things like amenities, trails, access to parks, things like that. The interior streets is a big change because right now our PRUD ordinance requires that all city streets be to the city standard, which is a 60-foot right-of-way. It's pretty big. But again, if we're looking at how to mix uses and use our land efficiently, sometimes a 60-foot right-of-way is not appropriate. And so this gives the Planning Commission, based on approvals from the city engineer and the public works director and myself, it gives you the ability to approve an alternative street design, which means it could be a narrower right-of-way. It could be the omission of a sidewalk on one side. It could be modified cross sections, modified approaches, things like that. In addition to that, it does allow the city to approve private streets, meaning that in a planned development, not every street is required to be public, and therefore that creates a whole host of other issues with HOAs and management and maintenance and those kind of things, but I've tried to address that here. It does allow the city to approve private streets that are maintained privately and owned privately, and that creates scenarios where you now can have rear load buildings, right? Instead of having every single building face the front of the street with a drive approach and a driveway, you now can internally circulate projects, which makes for a safer environment, which reduces all the connections to the main local road and generally can make things safer. Right now, we don't allow that under a platted environment. It's a single lot group dwelling kind of a thing, and this would allow for individual lots to be platted and sold with private streets. Parking is always a concern. So I've allowed some language here that basically gives the Planning Commission to provide some alternative parking requirements if there is certain situations. So you could do that for the overall appearance and density of a project. You can do it for some of the low to moderate income housing requirements that either HUD or our moderate income housing plan would have. So there's a number of alternatives that could be applied in a plan development based on the overall design and focus of the project. If not, then all of the parking of the base zone would apply. E is building materials and design standards. This is meant to promote a higher standard of construction. It's difficult to do with, well, it's illegal to do with individual single-family homes. The city can't regulate unless it's in a historic district or some other special overlay. We generally don't regulate what a single-family home looks like. But in a plan development that's based on a development agreement, then there are some architectural and design standards that we can apply and impose. And these are meant to lift the quality of the neighborhoods. And so there's some primary building materials here that are allowed, mainly masonry, large format glazing and storefront, architectural metals, cementitious materials like fiber siding and things like that, architectural concrete, things that are going to be durable and long lasting and hardy. That is set to be for about 60% of the building facade. The secondary materials that are allowed are engineered wood products, exterior grade wood products, stucco systems, and non-structural metal elements. Again, that's a secondary material meant to be 40% of the building facade. And then there's some prohibited materials. If you advance the page for me, please. Thank you. So in a plan development, there'd be no vinyl siding. There would be no plywood, of course. You couldn't have any reflective panels or glass. The EFIS system, which is a form of a stucco system, but sandwiched in insulation, basically, that would be allowed, but not without the impact-resistant drainage plane that's applied to those systems. And then standard CMU block would be prohibited as well, so you couldn't just have a block-faced building. And then that corresponds with section 4 there with the illustrative facade standards. So this talks about what the building articulation looks like. It models after a base middle cap type of a philosophy where your building has portions of it that work together, but it's identifiable as a base middle cap. And so I've gone through there and how those are delineated and what the articulation looks like horizontally, vertically. So it's a little bit prescriptive, but in general terms, it's meant to create a form of a building that looks a little bit more urban and is easily integrated into multiple uses. So think of a building that might have a single use on the ground floor, but then it could have different uses on upper floors. You want to make sure that that building looks like a cohesive building instead of 4 different buildings. Fenestration standards in section 4 there, which are basically openings. 25% of the ground floor would need to have window fenestrations. And then any mechanical or service type elements would need to be screened either on the rooftop through a parapet or on the ground with landscaping or building materials. Moving on to the landscaping, this is generally what we require now, water-wise landscaping. I've added some coverage ratios. Right now, we're seeing landscaping that is heavy on rock and kind of weak on plant material. And so in section F there, it looks at having a 75% coverage ratio of plant material in any given landscape area at maturity. So architectural people can design a landscape knowing how big the plants get, and then they space them accordingly to get that 75% coverage. So I think that's going to create a beautiful environment in terms of the 20% landscaping that we require. Yep, go on, thanks. It talks about some fencing, streetlights, not a big deal there, although there is an added section that prohibits chain link. So in these types of plan developments, chain link would not be allowed. Utilities are mentioned pretty heavily. That's because that's one of the major focuses of this change, is to allow for different types of situations instead of just having everything city-owned and city-maintained. This allows for a private developer to create an HOA to where the streets and the utilities are owned and managed by the HOA. So we've talked a lot about what those systems can be, how they're to be managed, what type of documents are required. So typical HOA documents are going to be, they're required now, but we've maintained that requirement. A new feature is a fund. So typically HOAs are based off of initial reserve fund, and that's what sets the first year budget. So when you create an HOA, you have an engineer study your built environment, the roads and the streets, everything you're required to pay for. And it looks at what that's going to cost in the future, so it establishes a reserve fund. And that is what your typical budget's based on in the first couple of years, and then it is amended to reflect what your actual costs are of those maintenance items. So we just reiterate some of that those maintenance funds for roads and utilities need to be established at the front end, at the HOA level. If you'll go ahead and advance. I've talked about some maintenance failure remedies that we currently have under state law, but I've made it very specific here where in the case that there is maintenance failure of privately owned facilities, whether it's road or utilities, then we have the ability to perform that necessary maintenance or make a connection, basically move that connection from private to public. Part of the reason for this is in some cases we have HOAs that have private utilities now that do not perform the maintenance that's required, and that includes fire hydrants. They're connected to a water system that's private. And so in that case, where there is no oversight from the city because we have no maintenance obligation, then there's a real risk of a fire happening and us responding to the fire and that fire hydrant being dead because there hasn't been ongoing maintenance. The city is obligated to operate and maintain their fire hydrants on an annual basis and certify them. And so if we have subdivisions in the city, which we do, that have private systems, then there's a real risk there. So in this case, we still want to allow for private systems to take place, but there is going to be a more onerous maintenance requirement and then some recourse if that maintenance isn't done on those type of things. That goes for backflow. That's a state law and some other things like that. So Section 4 and the subsequent sections are really the process. So the development standards for the application, and then going on through what the process of review is. So I won't cover those. Those are pretty standard to what we currently do now. Maintenance of common facilities, I mentioned that it's pretty similar to the maintenance requirements of the privately held utilities and roads. I have added some desirable amenities, so we do want to see these plan developments with open space and other amenities that are associated with a good quality of life and a unique type of a neighborhood. So that's really the gist of it. You all have had this in your packet. You've read most of it, I'm sure. So I'll stop there and just answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Cooper? If none, then we would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Propose a motion to open our public hearing.
Can you identify the specific?
Yes.
Thank you.
Which one is it? The zoning text amendment, RCC 1022 PRUD. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing. At this point, we welcome members of the public to step forward if you have concerns regarding that which has just been discussed. We will be discussing the Ritter Drive in a separate meeting or a separate hearing. So you're welcome to step forward. As you do, we're requesting that you take no more than 3 minutes to give us your views and opinions. We welcome those. And if you would state your name and city of residence as you do.
Good evening. Joe Gracie. I own a couple of pieces on Ritter Drive. Brandon and I have had some interesting discussions. I have a couple of questions. First question is, who prepared that comprehensive list that you just went through?
That's my job.
So you did that whole list?
Yes, and then I sent it for review to our city engineer, our building official, and our city attorney and public works director.
And how much time was involved in that?
Between all of us, I couldn't tell you hours, but over the course of about 3 weeks.
So the last 3 weeks?
That was put together.
Thank you, thank you. I have a question about the stipulation on multi-use being limited to 5 acres and more. Why is that?
As I mentioned, again, this is just our thinking based on best practice and what we've seen. That's why we bring it to the commission to have a public hearing, is to get feedback. But typically, when you look at mixed use type of projects, they include commercial elements, and those commercial elements largely have typically a larger land use demand than a straightforward residential development. You have parking lots, you have loading areas, you have storefronts, sidewalks that are typically wider, things like that. And so we figured that if there's mixed uses being proposed, then that should happen on a larger scale of a minimum sized area.
So you mentioned earlier that there is a limited amount of space in this small city for these developments. It seems, just on the face of it, Brandon, that's unreasonable. 5 and more when you have limited space in a city and you want to incorporate these newer ideas as from '07. It would seem that smaller space could be incorporated, and it seems arbitrary. That's all. That's my only comment. Seems arbitrary. I have another question. You mentioned switching the landscaping from 25-75 from 25% shrubbery and grass and so forth to 75% shrubbery and grass and 25% rock, as like what Tesla has done. All their trees are dying. It's just rock over there. Why change it from 25 to 75 when we haven't had any snow yet? And the state a couple of years ago offered money to dryscape. Why would a city propose more grass, more shrubbery when we are having a serious water issue? I'm wondering why you would do that.
I think probably the best way we could do this is have all of the folks come up that want to speak to this, and then I'll answer all the questions kind of in series instead of having a question and answer. So if you don't mind, I'm happy to answer all the questions, but I think we should take all the questions first, and then I'll answer them.
Okay.
That's all mine.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
This isn't the Ritter Drive.
No,
No.
this is not.
Okay, so if that's our last question, maybe I misunderstood you, maybe you misunderstood me. So the required landscaping that is in other sections of our code isn't changing. What's being proposed in this amendment is that of that required landscaping, there's a 75% coverage ratio, meaning that if you have a 200 square foot landscape bed, then whatever you plant there should, at maturity, cover 75% of that landscape bed. It's not requiring more square footage of a landscaped area. Does that answer your question? Yep.
Yeah, so a mature tree would be,
Yes. A tree canopy would be calculated into that 75
it
coverage.
isn't necessarily grass that we're,
No, the grass requirements are still, again, in other sections of the code, and they're still limited. So we're not expanding the types of material that are being used. We're just saying that once you have a landscape bed, then instead of having it be largely rock and calling it landscaping, we're saying that you need to still abide by the landscape provisions in other parts of the code. It just needs to have a larger coverage area.
and having that, I mean, from my perspective, a mature tree will reduce the heat, the reflective heat, if you've got a lot of rock base around, and so it doesn't create additional the heat island that we hear so often referred to, that you have with commercial developments with pavement rooftops.
Right.
This would help to mitigate that and to minimize that, so it doesn't become so heat intensive.
Right, and more attractive. I believe the heat island effect is real, and we could swing that pendulum too far in the other direction if we're not careful with the reduction of grass and other plant materials. And so we're still encouraging water-wise materials. We're still encouraging limited grass use, especially in areas that grass doesn't make any sense. But those plants that you do plant, use the plant material that will get bigger so that it covers more area.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any other comments? All right, motion to close the public hearing then?
I propose a motion to close the public hearing for the zoning text amendment RCC 1022 PRUD.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Commissioners, any comments on what we've heard? Any concerns that you have?
I don't have any concerns, but I do have a technical question. So where you had that little mix up between 2B 1 and 2 with the 3 and the 5 acres. Do we need to prepare a modification to approve that?
Yeah, I think you would modify it to make that change,
Okay.
because the notice was given with that mistake.
All right.
And then any other modifications that you might want to add based on conversations.
I have one.
I thought you might.
And we mentioned this in the work session. I didn't see anything specific regarding amenities developments. I know that in other areas of our code, we have requirements that the amenities, which would be clubhouses, grassy areas, those kinds of things, that they are to be completed with the first phase of the development. And if not, then they are appropriately bonded so that we see that those amenities are followed through. And I would like to have that considered as a modification to be included with this code.
I think that's a good one, and a good spot for that is 4B, where we've talked about the desirable amenities that are generally applicable to these types of plan developments. That would be a good spot to then require the phasing of those developments or the required bonding. It could be redundant to our existing code, but as we get through the Title 10 comprehensive update, then we'll cross-reference those and make sure it fits tight.
I just think if it's local, it doesn't get overlooked.
That's right.
So. Any other comments, Commissioners? Right, then we would entertain a motion for action on this item?
I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed text amendments to Title 10, Chapter 22, Planned Residential Unit Development, PRUD, subject to the following modifications. That Section 2B, 1 and 2 be corrected so that 1 shows 3 acres and 2 shows 5 acres. And in Section 4B, that we add that amenity development should be completed in the first phase or bonded if it is not.
Okay, any,
Actually, let me also address some findings.
okay,
I'm finding that the amendment as modified is consistent with the Riverdale City General Plan, that it provides predictable and equitable application of regulations, that it establishes clear and objective standards, and promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare of Riverdale City.
any discussions on the motion? If none, do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yes.
Let's see, do
have
we
to
do
poll?
this one by? Yeah. Michelle, if you would.
Sorry. Commissioner Henstra,
Yes.
Commissioner Francis,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes,
Commissioner Bothorpe,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton.
Yes.
motion passes, and that will be forwarded to the city council. All right, next on our agenda, we have a public hearing to receive and consider public comment regarding the proposed general plan amendment, which would modify the Riverdale City General Plan as it relates to future land use map, and a proposal to rezone approximately 4.35 acres at 1526 West Ritter Drive from the single-family residential R18 to multiple-family residential R4 zone. Before we open the public hearing, Mr. Cooper, if you would give us a background on that, please.
Sure. And if you want, I could do both presentations and then you can open it up the public hearing, or actually maybe let's do the general plan first and then we'll do that.
Okay.
Okay. So as you mentioned, this proposal is intended to update the future. I need a clicker, I guess. No clicker? Okay. You're my clicker. Thank you. To amend the future land use map in the general plan as it relates to the designations that it shows. So if you're familiar with the future land use map, it's up here on the wall, this one here. And the general plan in its entirety was adopted by the city council in September of 2023. It's intended to be the future roadmap of the city in terms of what you use as the basis as your land use decisions. It's not prescriptive zoning. It's not legally binding, and it doesn't give any vested rights to property owners. It just is something that the public was involved in creating and is meant to guide the decision-making of the legislative and administrative bodies. So tonight's request is to just look at the future land use map as it relates to the area along Ritter between 1500 and Freeway Park Drive. It's there shown in the yellow as R16. This is a precursor to the next topic on the agenda, which is the request for a rezone. We want the land use decision and the land use policy to reflect and be consistent with the general plan. And so you're being asked to look at the general plan first and then the rezone second. So right now, disregard the actual zoning, but if we'll go to the next slide, pay attention to this designation. So this is the important part of this step of the process, and that is that the future land use map is showing this as detached residential. And you can kind of see that all of that yellow area is being regarded as detached residential. So what does that mean? Detached residential is not a zone. It's not a zone. It could mean many things, but most importantly, it means that those are single-family homes generally. That's a low density type of a use. And so as the general plan was created and adopted, that's the designation that was given to this area. The request is to amend that from detached to attached, which would essentially facilitate a medium density to high density type of a situation. Again, these are not zoning designations, but with attached residential as a general guidance, that could mean townhomes, that could mean apartments, that could mean other things. So that's a medium to high residential kind of guidance in an attached residential type of a designation. So as you look at this tonight, there's a couple of things that you'll need to be aware of in terms of the scope of your review. So number one, is it consistent with Utah code? Utah code gives broad-based authority to cities and their planning commissions to essentially zone their own cities and dictate what they want their land use to be. And so that's your purview tonight. Is this request consistent with the rest of the general plan? That's a big one. So inside the general plan, there are other narratives, there are other objectives, there are other strategies outside of this map that that have sway on the decision in terms of what guidance has been given to the city in terms of its land use as it relates to affordable housing, as it relates to giving people housing options, unit types, those kind of things. Is what you do tonight able to be implemented? That's another consideration that you'll want to take a look at. Is your decision on the general plan amendment going to then create a situation that can be implemented by city administration? So we don't want to create a plan that is so far out there that the market can't respond to it. And then most importantly, does it promote public health and safety and the welfare of the city? So let's go back to the screen here. If we'll go to the next page. As we look at the map of the area, I've identified kind of what this neighborhood looks like. So to the west there, you've got some commercial properties along Freeway Park Drive. You're all familiar with this area. To the north, you've got high-density multifamily. And to the east, you have some more commercial and then some more single-family, low-density residential. So that's the context of the neighborhood. 1500 and Ritter are local roads. Freeway Park Drive, I think, would be considered a local road, but it acts a little bit differently. It's not quite a collector, but it is attached to those two. So in terms of looking at what the attached residential designation would lead to, which is medium to higher density, some of the things you should be thinking about is in this area, the area of the vacant land specifically, where it's already designated detached, does it promote a nice transition, a nice buffer between the lower density to the higher density, which is the commercial? That's one element that would be important for you to look at. Does it support the orderly growth? So again, as I mentioned, we're a built city, but there are pockets of the city, mostly infill or redevelopment, that allow Riverdale to grow and to expand its resident base, which is important, and to provide options for people who want to live in Riverdale. And so does changing this from a lower density, lower intensity use to a medium to high, is that going to support orderly growth and the efficient use of land and infrastructure? Let's go to the next slide. Some of the analysis that we did as we looked at this proposal is to, as I've mentioned, kind of look at the interpretation of detached and attached, and I've kind of spoken to that, but I wanted to show this slide. The general plan explicitly states that the land use designations are intended to indicate the general type of and character of development, not zone it. I've mentioned that. And I think it's important to note that the general plan also recognizes that attached residential is a complementary residential category that transitions between attached and detached forms of development. So that's what the general plan is currently saying in terms of the interpretation of those two designations. Go ahead, please. What does the general plan say about our housing goals as it might relate to this type of a proposal? The general plan encourages the city to rezone certain property to higher residential densities to facilitate the production of moderate income and affordable housing, and just general choice in housing types. So that's a key element of the general plan and also our moderate income housing plan that the state requires from us. It states that a mix of housing types and densities is necessary to meet meet the needs of all economic segments of the community. So having a diverse community with diverse types of people, diverse incomes, diverse backgrounds, that creates a real quality sense of place. And so by allowing for a mixture of housing types, especially as transitions from one type to another, it really promotes that. General plan says that the infill and redevelopment areas need to essentially be located next to existing infrastructure so that it might leverage that infrastructure instead of the typical development patterns that we see in Utah, which is sprawl. How far can we go to new land? Our general plan really looks at where can we fit new developments into pockets of the city that currently have road systems in place, utilities that can handle additional development. And then I mentioned the moderate income housing element that we have in the general plan. So again, the plan did anticipate some of these areas being rezoned. Go ahead. In terms of transportation and infrastructure analysis, the general plan identifies Ritter as a corridor plan for future bicycle and pedestrian improvements, including some bike lanes and things. And so going back to that emphasis that higher density development should be located on these corridors that have these type of infrastructure improvements planned. That's something that the plan is guiding us to do. Proximity to employment, access to transportation and transportation routes, all of those things are in the general plan. Go ahead. And then a big one, which is compatibility with neighborhoods. So the general plan does not prohibit multifamily development within areas as detached residential. So again, that's where those two kind of things where the general plan is guidance and the zoning is law. The guidance does not actually prohibit, it just encourages that area should be that type of a designation. In fact, the general plan emphasizes the importance of compatibility and scale. So that's the flexibility that's needed to look at proposals like this and to make smart decisions about how do buildings fit with buildings and what's the current infrastructure, what's the transportation network look like. And I'll discuss that in just a minute, actually on our next item. So the general plan explicitly supports transitions between residential densities, so lower density single family to a medium to high density. That is important and is called for in the plan. Supporting multifamily developments that are compatible with surrounding neighborhoods, generally lower density neighborhoods. And then the use of the zoning and development standards to mitigate any impacts that might come from that. So tonight's discussion in terms of this item isn't going to regulate those standards, but know that as you make the decision on the general plan and the subsequent rezone that follows, that all of that will be regulated by the current zoning standards, and then if the PD ordinance is passed, that would be a whole new layer on top of this type of a thing. Go ahead, please. So I've mentioned a couple of these things. I'll just mention it again. So tonight's review for you is consistency with Utah State Code, whether these types of things apply, and really it's in the form of, are we providing clear guidance and are we implementing clear standards? That's really what Utah's code wants us to do. Is it consistent with the general plan. As I've mentioned, we've reviewed some of those things. You're all familiar with the general plan. Does it meet the goals and objectives and policies related to what that plan says regarding transportation, housing, economic development, public facilities, and community character? Is what you're being asked to decide on, is it implementable? We talked about that a minute ago. And then public health and safety. Is it going to impact the general welfare of the community, or is it otherwise going to promote the general welfare? And then again, some of the factors that you're being asked to consider are will advance the visions and goals of the city. Orderly growth, we mentioned that. Is it going to enhance our flexibility to provide housing options to as many people as possible? Does it coordinate with our infrastructure planning? Clear guidance on our policy, and does it act as an effective implementation tool? So these kind of things are important, and I've mentioned them already. So I've reviewed this, our city engineer has reviewed this, Public Works Director, and in terms of the general plan amendment and its consistency with the general plan itself, and the relevance to those things that I've identified and talked about a couple of times already, we find that it's compatible with all of those things, those approval standards that I've mentioned. And we actually recommend that the Planning Commission move forward with a positive recommendation to the City Council to amend the general plan from detached residential to attached residential in this specific area.
Okay, thank you. Any questions as to what's been presented so far?
Just remind me, with the space that it currently has, how many single-family homes would fit there?
That's a good question for the next part, but I think it's relevant here too. And that right now it's R16. That would allow on a 6,000 square foot lot about 23 to 24 homes. In fact, in 2021, there was a proposal for 23 homes.
Okay.
And I'll get into that more on that rezone.
We talked about an overlay zone. Mm-hmm. Is that applicable at this point? Or, I mean, the commercial overlay zone, and so that
you mean the planned development?
You brought it out upstairs in the work session, that
the mixed use zone.
the mixed use.
Right. So if you look at the map, it's really hard to see, but there's a hatched mark over this area here. Actually, never mind. It's not there. So scratch that. There is no overlay zone.
So we didn't, that
No.
did not apply what we previously discussed then?
Yep.
Because that's across the street, it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like it goes around it.
Okay.
But the planned development overlay, if it moves forward as proposed, would then overwrite in a certain way the base zone. So even if this general plan amendment was forwarded to the city council and the city council approved it, then the general plan would be amended to attached residential, and then despite the base zoning, the plan development ordinance would be effective there if passed.
One more time.
Do we need a break?
I got lost in translation.
The base zoning today is R16.
Right.
The general plan designates it as detached residential in terms of the intent. So if the general plan amendment as proposed was to go to the city council and be approved, and despite the zoning, then the plan development overlay, which is what we just discussed, could be applied there, and a development agreement would control the development.
So if we required a development agreement, that could control that.
Under the new ordinance, as I've proposed it, as you have recommended
Okay, 'cause
approval of.
that's my chief concern,
Yeah.
is that there's better control as to what goes in there.
And we'll talk about that more as we discuss the rezone.
Right, right.
Yep.
Okay, so let's open the public hearing if there's no further discussion. Do we have a motion?
Motion to open the public hearing regarding this action.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We'll just keep it brief here. Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Any opposed? All right, so the public hearing is open. Keep in mind that this is for the amendment to the general plan for future land use map. This has nothing specific to the proposed development that will follow. But we open the public hearing now, and so if any of you have comments that you would like to make at this time, we welcome you to come forward. And if you'd state your name and city of residence, please.
My name is Janet Deschamps, and I'm a Riverdale resident. I live on.
Thank you.
What I'm thinking is if we don't even change this general plan thing, we don't have to worry about the next meeting, right? Really? Why would we change the general plan? It just doesn't make any sense. It's a residential area. I've lived there for 35 years. It's a residential area. Why would we put in, what's it called? Attached, whatever. Detached, I mean, the detached part is going to be hard enough for us that have lived there for that many years because it's been a pasture, you know.
Sure.
And we've known for years that eventually there's going to be houses there. But as you start putting in 3-story townhouses, it just doesn't. What was that word? They don't.
Coincide.
Yeah, it doesn't coincide with the area at all. Yes, Cherry Creek Apartments are back behind there, but they're, if you go up Ritter Drive, I mean, I don't know how long you guys have been on the commission, but we've been going over Ritter Drive for years.
Long time.
But, I mean, you know what it used to look like. It was just a little country road going down with trees on both sides, and now it's already, you know, with the Coleman property all developed, you know, that's, I used to look at trees and now I look at houses. But if those were 3-story townhouses, you know, you wouldn't even see the mountains anymore. So anyway, in my opinion is if you don't promote this change to the general plan, we don't have to worry about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you explain attached? What types of attached properties could go in that?
Again, it's kind of vague in the general plan, and our code doesn't carry over the same language, but generally speaking, attached would mean anything that shares a wall. So townhomes, duplexes, apartments, things
Okay.
like that.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Melissa Carey. I live on Ritter Drive. I am just wondering, my question regarding the general plan and changing it is, we had this meeting a few years ago. We went through this once already. And if the previous owner was declined to have theirs changed to an R4, why can this owner come in and then get it changed to R6 when it was literally just changed? It was A1. It was going to be this transitional overlay zone. It got rezoned to R6. We knew that that was there, but how is that fair to tell the last owner, no, you can't do R4, change it to R6, and then let somebody new come in and buy it and rezone theirs a few years later? How is that legal? I don't understand how that works.
Okay.
I mean, I have other things to say about it, but is in relation to that, the rezoning, I just don't understand how that can work. A few years later, somebody else comes in and poof, it's like, oh yeah, it's a positive thing, when on map, it looks great, like, oh yeah, we've got commercial all around, and then we have apartments, but the lay of the land is different up there. Like, what, the part of the land that we're all looking at, it doesn't look like that on the map. And so to look at it and say, oh yeah, this is just a transition. Like it says in the thing that we should look at it and say, hey, this is commercial. This is a perfect transition to this neighborhood when you're looking at an old farm neighborhood, old apartments, weird little businesses that have been tucked into the neighborhood. And then you've got all the other, insane amount of concerns there. But this is not just a general new part of the city where, like, I get where these places fit. I'm all over Ogden all the time. Like, there are places where these fit. Right there at the top of Ritter is not where this fits.
Okay. So can we make a list of these questions so that they can be addressed?
Yes, please.
You got that? Okay, thanks, Michelle. And so we welcome others.
Mike Dunkley, I live on Ritter Drive. Can we go back to that map of the colors, the zoning? I have a question on my house and two other houses. The one below it, please. What's going on with that being mixed use, non-residential? Because I live in one of those spots, so I'm curious, like, what's going on with that?
Yeah. I wasn't here when the general plan was created, so I'm not sure why that overlay applies to that. That's mixed use, non-residential. So my hunch would be is that the contiguous nature of those parcels to the commercial zone and how they might get developed, but I can't say that for sure. That would just be a kind of a basic hunch.
Gotcha. Okay, so like, I bought that house as my forever home, and I've been upgrading the house and doing all that. Like, that to me is a red flag sitting in this meeting because I have no idea what that means, right? That it's like, I plan on living there till I die. So what does that mean? Is that like, if we were to sell out, that could be used for commercial, but that's not the city trying to push us out, right? With that zoning?
Right. Zoning, as a private property owner, you have rights. And so if the neighboring property that is zoned commercial wanted to expand and they bought your property, then they would have a legal right to then expand their commercial as a mixed use based on this. Well, not a legal right, but our plan would facilitate the request of them to use that land that way. But it doesn't mean that it's obligated by you.
Gotcha.
You're not being forced to do anything.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to clear that.
Any other comments from the public? Maybe if you could address the previous question then.
It's a good question. So the land has been rezoned a couple of times, as mentioned. In 2017, it went from A1 to an old zone called LIT, low impact transition. And then in 2021, it was there was a request to do R4, which was denied, and then it ultimately became R16. The reason why there's so many bites at the apple is because landowners have a right to request a land use review and decision on their land. This land has a new owner from when it was requested to be rezoned in 2021, and so that landowner has a right to request a consideration, and that's what's happening.
I think you mentioned previously that the prior request included approximately 100 units.
The 2021 application was 109 townhomes under an R4 designation, and the 2017 designation for LIT was for senior living.
Okay. Any other questions?
And what was the reason for the denial previously? What was the?
I looked at the minutes and some of the notes. So the Planning Commission recommended no to the City Council, and then the City Council ultimately made the final decision of no. And so that was in 2020. So maybe I got those dates backwards. I have some notes here. So in 2020, the R4 request was denied, and then in 2021, it was zoned to the R16 from the LIT zone. My hunch from the notes was the fact that the density was too great, so it was 109 units, and they didn't do a traffic analysis, so no one knew what the traffic was going to do to the roads.
Okay.
Are we gonna discuss that traffic analysis?
The
Okay.
next
Yeah.
one.
In the next item. So, Chair, if I may recommend, so we've had my presentation. We're still in the public hearing for the general plan. Once you close the public hearing, you may, if you choose, move on to the next item without taking action, and then you can take action on both items once you hear the next presentation and hear from the public on that.
Okay.
If that
I
makes
think
more
that
sense.
that would be of benefit to do
Yeah.
that. So, let's consider closing the public hearing on this portion. So do we have a motion?
A motion to close.
They're the same agenda item, so we were gonna do just one, but talk about the one and
that's
then talk
right.
about the next one.
That's
So you don't
right.
need to close it.
We don't need to
You
close
just need to
it.
move on to the next,
Just
to
move
Okay.
B.
on.
And then
You?
after that.
These legal proceedings.
Sorry, I gave you bad advice. I forgot they were the same public hearing.
Okay. Thank you for keeping us on track, Michelle. Let's move on then, in addition to this, to have you explain the proposal to rezone approximately 4.35 acres at 1526 West River Drive from single-family residential R18 zone to multiple family R4 zone.
Okay, great, thank you. Michelle, do you have that slideshow? Okay, so what we've been talking about is the amendment to the general plan, specifically the future land use map, that facilitates then the reasonability and the justification for a potential rezone. And so now we'll be talking about that request for rezone. And we're actually joined by Luke Martineau with J. Fisher Companies. He is the applicant on behalf of the property owners. And so, Luke, if you wouldn't mind just stepping up and introducing yourself and just give us a brief overview of your request today, and then I can take it from there.
Thank you all for your time tonight. Luke Martineau with J. Fisher Companies in Centerville. We took a look at this piece of property, working with the property owner, and many of the things that Brandon has said in the past presentation on the zoning map amendment are some of our thoughts with this property. Is we're thinking 59 townhomes in this area, which would be a good transition from your business, your multifamily, to a lower residential type of area. We've done this in a few different areas around the state, and what we focus on is legacy projects. We don't want to come in here and build cheap housing that will not benefit anybody. We want to uplift the area. We want to take it and make it as good as Riverdale City is. We want to go to the standard that the city is already at. And I think Brandon has the rest of the presentation and any of the details that you'd like to know. If there's more questions about the traffic impact study or any of those other details, feel free to call me back up and we'll discuss those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay close.
Okay, thanks, Luke. So as mentioned, this is a request to amend the zoning map, so a rezone from the existing R16 to R4, which allows for a higher density type of a dwelling unit. And as Luke mentioned, this would then facilitate a 59 unit townhome project, which I'll show you there. Go ahead, please. So this is all in your packet as well, but I wanted to just show the specific land that is under the request. It's important to note that the general plan amendment would affect the parcel to the left, to the west there. So the rezone would only affect the parcels in the blue, but the general plan amendment, if you were to take action on that, would cover that parcel to the west as well. That's not part of tonight's action. That's owned by Mr. Gracie.
So what does that mean, Brandon? Excuse me for speaking out of turn.
What that means is that if this is approved by the city council, that your parcel would remain the R14, unless you would want it to be included in the R16, unless you wanted it to be included in the R4 zoning designation. That's up to you. Okay, so again, with your scope, there are some approval standards that are important based on our code and state law. There in your packet, there's a brief write-up from the applicant on some of these things. So you're to look at sufficient justification on the proposed amendment. That can mean a lot of things. We've talked about what the general plan gives us guidance on in terms of using our land near infrastructure to promote additional residential units that give a variety of housing types. That's one sufficient justification. There could be many. Whether the proposed amendment is harmonious with the overall character of the existing development in the vicinity, we've talked about that as being more of a transition. That's a harmonious type of a use. You're not making a decision on architectural standards or architectural elements in terms of whether building colors and materials are being harmonious with the neighbors. It's more of a use-based type of a decision. We've talked about this before. Is the proposal consistent with the general plan? Currently, without an amendment to the general plan, this proposal would be inconsistent given the fact that the general plan calls out detached instead of attached. Another approval standard is the extent to which the proposed amendment would adversely affect adjacent property. That could be anything from a view to more serious impacts to the road, to infrastructure. If there is anything that might require a modification or some kind of improvement to facilitate this that would impact others, that's a consideration you would want to take to heart. Have any of the effects that we might talk about or propose here in terms of the 59 townhomes, are they non-detrimental to the overall public health and safety, or is it being beneficial? So is the proposal going to provide, as we've talked, additional options for residences? Is it going to generally improve the quality and nature of the area? Are the facilities and services adequate in this area? That's an approval standard that you'll need to keep in mind, and I'll talk about that in a minute when we look at the traffic study. And the last one is the developer or the owner willing to enter into an agreement for the development of land? That was attached to your packet. That's an agreement that essentially says that if this goes through Planning Commission and City Council, both with the general plan amendment and the request for rezone, they would be asked to commit to the 59-unit townhome project in the general form of the concept that we're going to see tonight. And the reason for that agreement is to provide an interim step between today's rezone and tomorrow's approval of a site plan, which will come eventually if this is approved. What happens occasionally, and in the case of this R16, the proposed development that prompted the R16 rezone never came to be. And so that property went from LIT to R16 under the guise of a development project, that never happened. And so this interim agreement is meant to essentially say that if this is approved in its entirety, there's an 18-month period in which the developer would then have to finalize the final development plan, the final site plan approval, and move forward with the agreement or with the development. If that doesn't happen, then the zoning reverts back to the R16, and that protects the city. That allows you to base a decision on what you think you're going to get instead of just opening it up to whatever might come after you rezone it to a more dense zone. So again, there's the current zoning, the R16 in the yellow. We're not looking to rezone the large parcel to the left. That's just current zoning. R5 is to the north, so that again does give some justification in terms of a general planning strategy to where you look at transitions and adjacent zones being compatible. Go ahead, please. We talked about this extensively. The general plan would need to be amended to facilitate this rezone. Here's a historic use of the land. This is an aerial from 2019, so as was brought up previously, it's generally low density, underutilized type of a land use now in both the subject property and the property to the west, which is that larger piece with the house and the tree in the middle and the swimming pool. The land generally looks about like this today, except for that house on the corner, or not the corner, but close to the corner there at the edge of the map. I think that house is gone, but for the most part, this is what today looks like. So we talked about these. We won't cover that again. Go ahead. One of the factors for consideration that we look at in terms of our recommendation to you is, does a development like this provide an edge and create a buffering between certain types of uses? So that's been a big topic of tonight's discussion. And it really is important because compatibility is something that we always strive for in terms of planning, creating uses that are not overly impactful from one to another. And in this case, if you recall that other aerial, I mean, there's commercial, there's single family, there's different types of commercial, there's high density multifamily. And so compatibility is a big concern, and the prevailing character of the neighborhood is also a concern. What does the new guy in town look like in terms of who's already there? And that can mean architectural standards, that could mean all kinds of things, but tonight is just the use. Does a higher density product in the form of a townhome, does that fit the character of this neighborhood? The other things we look at is zoning boundaries. So we don't cross properties, we don't cut boundaries off, and so that's why we've kind of just taken the subject property and proposed that. In the future, other properties could be rezoned to include the R4 designation, the one to the west that I've already identified. That certainly could be the case. But we didn't want to include anything that wasn't being proposed by the applicant. Again, multifamily and higher density is a good buffer to commercial. We don't want to isolate neighborhoods, and having vacant land in between different types of uses especially along streets, is a form of isolation. And so by developing up to those street edges, now you're creating a cohesive neighborhood, and instead of having empty lots everywhere that separates things from each other. And then again, avoiding a development pattern that will divide a neighborhood. Albeit a more dense use, it still is residential. It still would be owner occupied, and so that's generally what's across the street and down the road. And so it does have a compatibility that reflects the current nature of the neighborhood. Other factors that we look at is our current code. So this is being proposed under the R4 zone classification, and the purpose of that is to provide a higher density residential area with the necessary public services to provide a transition from less intensive, lower density uses, which in this case is the single family homes surrounding it. We talked about the general plan being detached residential, and so the amendment is at question tonight and needs to happen prior to this, which is why we've talked about it first. And then the R4 does give the ability to create some smaller lots, and in this case, it's the 59 townhomes. So that's really your kind of scope, and then our factors of consideration. Go ahead. We'll talk about the project now. So it's just the subject land that was identified in that first map. It doesn't include the vacant, well, semi-vacant land to the west. That would remain R16 under this proposal. So 59 townhomes. You can see that there's 2 drive approaches, one on each side of the property, and they're pretty much in the general location of the existing drive approaches. So that was something that I think was well intended. Again, this is not a site plan review, so I'll speak to a few things that I think are important as it relates to your consideration for the rezone, but we're not scrutinizing the site, we're not scrutinizing the architecture, we're scrutinizing the use. But because we're looking at the impact on the neighborhood, the density is important, and so I wanted to just focus on the number of units, how it circulates internally, how it approaches Ritter Drive in terms of the 2 drive approaches, and then the traffic. Let's go to the next one. Well, I thought I'd actually provide this not for architectural precedent, but to show you that what a 3-story or 2-story townhome looks like at a setback that would be similar to what you'd see here. So you can just flip through these. These are precedent images from the developer. Let's keep flipping through. Go ahead. This is the secret slide spot. So there was some talk about what was proposed before. So I wanted to show this map in relation to the other map that we just looked like. So under the current R16 designation, this was the plan that was essentially the impetus behind the R16 rezone in 2021. And as you see, there's 23 single-family lots there, all within that 6,000 square foot and above minimum size. And what you see is you see the 2 drive approaches, but then you also would have individual drive approaches from the other homes that don't face those streets. So you'd have lot 22 and 23. Those 2 would face Ritter as well. So you'd have multiple cuts on the road versus an alternative. This was the base model for the traffic impact analysis that we asked the developer to provide. And I've got it here. I don't have it electronically because it was a huge file. But essentially, this was the baseline because, again, this is the current zoning. This could be developed today with the site plan approval. So what does that mean in terms of traffic that would happen today? And the proposed 59 homes are estimated to create about 390 trips per day. The 24 residential homes that are currently permitted creates about half of that. So that's pretty obvious to think about. Trips are looked at during AM and PM peak times, and so that's how they're designated. And this engineer looked at 4 separate intersections to look at impact based on the current zoning and the proposed zoning. Those intersections are Ritter and Freeway Park Drive, Ritter and 1500, and then the 2 drive approaches that are being proposed to come out. So Michelle, do you mind going back to the concept map? Other way, sorry. There you go. Keep going. Yep, thanks. So again, Ritter Freeway Park, Ritter 1500, and then those 2 drive approaches. Based on 59 units, how many trips would be generated per day, and where do they go, and what's the impact? Those intersections are generally rated with a level of service between A and F. So that's not like your grade school grades. There's an E in there. So it's generally the level of service, and F is requiring modifications. E would require modifications. The base level of service standard for these roads based on national standards from the engineer is a D. So anything below a D would require modifications. Anything above a D, the current streets would handle that projected demand. And Luke can speak to this probably more than I can if you have more specific questions, but from my review of the traffic impact study, all of those intersections perform at an A or a B, both currently with the current traffic that's on there, with the proposed traffic of a 23, 24 unit residential development, and a proposed development, the traffic from a proposed townhome development of 59 units. They all perform between an A and a B, which is good, not requiring any modification. That means that the queuing is limited to an acceptable level. The wait times are limited to an acceptable level, and essentially the roads are built to handle that kind of traffic. The Freeway Park Drive and Ritter intersection does degrade a bit to a D in 2030. So they've projected out 5 more years in the study to look at what traffic looks like in 5 years in this area. And that intersection does degrade to a D, still acceptable level of service, no modifications required. And that's based on the Wasatch Front Regional Council travel demand model that they pulled from based on how traffic is working in 2030. So that's my knowledge of the traffic impact study. It's essentially saying that the roads are for cars and that the demand that a 59 unit townhome project would create is the roads are sufficient to handle that. Does that mean that there's more traffic than there is now? Absolutely. Would it be potentially double than what a 24 unit single family home development would bring? Most likely. But in terms of the road system needing improvements to handle that kind of traffic, in terms of not just movement but safety as well, then I think it scores really well. Okay, let's go down a couple. Go all the way to the end. We'll talk about one last thing. I mentioned that in 2017 it was an LIT, and then it went to R4, which was denied. This was the development for R4. So you can see how that shapes up versus what we're looking at. And as I mentioned, I believe that's one of the reasons why it was denied under the previous commission's review, is that it didn't have a traffic analysis to determine whether or not the roads could handle it. The roads were different back then as well. Freeway Park Drive is new and has north and south connections that have changed. We will be getting a roundabout at the bottom of Ritter next year. So that I don't think was factored in on the traffic study, but that will have a positive effect on flow of traffic as well, all of which weren't a consideration back in 2020 and 2021. So that's my analysis. Again, after reviewing it in accordance with the general plan, talking to the developer and getting a commitment that they would commit to that agreement, and if they weren't for some reason able to go forward with the proposed development, that it would revert back to an R16, and feeling comfortable with the traffic impacts, we would recommend approval of the rezone request.
Okay, thank you. With our public hearings still open, we would welcome other comments.
Melissa, Carrie again from Winter Drive. I just want to point out that these studies, like you're asking how many townhomes, these pictures aren't apples to apples, because the first one included the lot that this guy over here has now.
Right.
So you guys changed that, he could sell that off to them. We now have a much bigger problem that was already declined. So the other thing that's not on the map is that we have a giant hillside. So we put a 3-story townhomes and we've got a canyon going up that road, which is absolutely ridiculous for the landscape that we have up there. Like, my house would be sitting in a canyon. Between 3-story townhomes, we went down and looked at the ones behind Lowe's. Those are 3-story townhomes. They are gigantic. They're like a wall. That doesn't fit what we have up there. It doesn't fit any of Ritter Drive, and it sits so high up there that those things are just gonna be towers up there. It doesn't fit it, but I just wanted to point that out because everything that is showing, I'm like, that's not apples to apples. You're saying that was 100? Well, this could easily be 100 if they included that other lot. So.
That's a good observation. The two sides aren't totally equal. So I think if the land to the west was developed in this manner, it would still be less than 109.
It wouldn't be,
But
though,
you're right.
because he has the building on the bottom, which they didn't have before. If he sold all his land, it would be just as big.
Right,
It
that's
would
not,
be a park
that
drive.
wouldn't be rezoned. That's a frontage to a major road, so that wouldn't be
But
be
it still
considered.
would be close. We
It would be close,
pushing
yeah.
100.
Yeah, you would
And he
be
could
close to
easily sell
100.
it off because he's not even using it
Right.
right now.
You should see him after this meeting.
Janet Deshaw again. Hey, I just want to say, we're talking about the character of Ritter Drive. Those townhomes are absolutely not the character of Ritter Drive. I mean, I don't know, you guys know Ritter Drive, right? It's tree lined, no, townhomes are not the character of Ritter Drive. And you talk about having a buffer between commercial and residential. That is not any kind of buffer. That's an eyesore, in my opinion. I know it's just my opinion. And also in my opinion, Mr. Cooper, I feel like you're totally on their side.
I do too.
The way you've presented all of this is pushing for the R4 and the townhomes. And I know the city wants more people to come in, but this is totally not the character of Ritter Drive. Ritter Drive has always been that beautiful street on the south bench, and putting townhomes up there. You guys know. You understand, right? It's just not the character of Ritter Drive. It's totally not. So, my opinion, just scratch that general plan thing and we don't have to worry about it.
Good evening. My name is Matt. I live on Ritter Drive as well, right in between these two. So what? Oh, White. Sorry. Couple of concerns and comments I'd like to ask and get clarification on. As I look at this, we got 59 units and I counted 30 parking stalls. Is that correct? So when we talk about traffic flow and everything, are we also talking that we're gonna turn this street into a literal parking lot? There is 29 less parking stalls than there are homes. I personally am not rich, but I own 2 vehicles. I'm gonna assume every person in the house owns at least one, but you can assume spouses, minimum 2. We're looking at 40 cars parked on that
Aren't they
street.
gonna have garages?
Yeah, townhomes are parked internally.
Internally?
So the 30 stalls are for guests. So every townhome has 2 stalls.
I still feel like we're turning it into a bit of a parking lot, but you are right, I will narrow it down significantly.
We would redline the curb in front of the property in the site plan. I've already talked to the Public Works Director, and
Red line, would you be able, or
so basically no parking on the shoulder in front of the development.
at all?
No.
And they'll park on our side of the street.
So that's my
No, on both
concern is
sides,
my side.
in front of the length of the development on both sides. We want to keep that.
Our side is now redlined too, for anybody coming to our house and wanting to.
Which, that is something I'd also consider.
Yeah.
If I
You can
have
park
people
by the
over, I can't
townhomes.
have a one night of people parking on the street.
Well, if there's
Oh, and that's
not
a completely opposite problem, but that was not
Yeah.
a problem I have with that.
The uphill is the more of a concern. The downhill, if that's something that is important, then I don't see that as being as concerning as the uphill shoulder being blocked, especially around that turn.
And then I just want to point out too, I feel like we throw the word transition around a lot tonight, that it'd be a nice, easy transition, but again, where they're gonna be so tall, it's a literal wall. It's not a transition into anything. It is a dead stop of what is currently to what will be. And where Cherry Creek is around the corner, I don't feel like it really applies either. You're a half mile of road to get around to where that's at. That personally, I don't feel like it should be considered a transition into that. No one's transitioning from Ritter Drive to that. So my personal opinion is that's not really applicable. It's not a transition. This is a direct change. That's pretty much it for me. So thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Dunkley, live across the street from it. Hearing that it's all going to be red curb sucks for me. If nobody can park in front of my house and we have a clear spot for cars, there's enough of a shoulder right now. So that would be a definite bad situation for me to not be able to have that. I know inevitability, we need more housing than that. I just feel like this is way too much for that spot, especially with everything that's gone on with the base. I feel like we've had way more traffic. Especially with all the chaos of construction and such. So yes, maybe them pulling out in front of my house wouldn't be that big of a deal, but you factor also all the base traffic that's going up Ritter, both going to work and coming home. I feel like that's just going to make that road a lot worse. So yeah, and then hearing 3 stories as well. Something I really like about Ritter Drive is if you drive down it, looking the south side right now, because the north side obviously has changed a lot. I love that every house is unique. And that's part of the reason I bought the house I did. There was no other house that looked just like it. And going back to kind of the character of the neighborhood, Ritter Drive has a lot of character. Every house looks unique. Every house looks cool and different. And this is just kind of a soulless bunch of copy and paste. So I would be against it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Carey, Ritter Drive, like right in the middle of it. On the last layout, was it 2020 where they proposed, or after the designated R16, can we go back to that map of the last outline?
Yeah,
Where they
of
had
the
that-
single-family homes?
Yeah.
Yeah. That one?
So proposed 24 homes, right?
23.
23 in a bigger space.
Same space.
No, it's a bigger space.
No, that's the same property.
Okay. And isn't there, do you say there's exits? There was 4 on this, right? 1, 2, and then you say there's on each end also? Or is it just 2?
Each house facing Ritter would have its own driveway.
Like, where would that unit exit? Right there.
No, they didn't, that isn't how it was. They were, all the houses had to exit internally and then come out the neighborhood exit.
Right, so lot 22 and 23. So disregard lots 1 through 8 because that isn't part of what we're looking at.
Right.
So just, and maybe that's what you meant, I'm sorry.
And he's correct, that top part is his property.
Right, so disregard that. Lot 22 and 23 would face Ritter.
Right.
And so this plan could be proposed today and would be required to receive a review and approval.
And that would have been 17 or 18 units in the site that we're currently considering rezone.
Yeah,
Because the other 8 are Mr. Gacy's.
that's right. Yep.
So on this though, the proposed exits out of that out of the neighborhood were onto Ritter Drive?
On lots 22 and 23.
Okay. And that was it for that whole,
Also a road here.
okay, so they all exited a Ritter, nothing was off the ends going to,
Right.
okay. Yeah, I just feel like with the more 59 townhomes, more condensed, more people, it's just gonna be worse than this, traffic-wise.
Thank you.
One quick question. You mentioned that we're gonna put a roundabout at the bottom of this. Is that gonna go in before the townhome should, our opinions end up being disregarded? Will there be a temporary window where we have 300, 400 more cars traveling through that intersection at the bottom?
The roundabout's scheduled to start in the spring.
So it will beat out any construction of this?
Most likely. It'll be finished next year in the summer, I would imagine.
All right, I just wanted to make sure of that, but I'm still against this.
That's on, that's,
It is on the southern end, but people are gonna be driving it.
I just wanna make sure you.
Yeah.
There's not, we're not talking about that one.
Oh, we're not talking about the bottom of Riverdale Drive? It's up at the top.
1500.
Where
Old
the
Motor
old
View.
theater used to be.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
where the roundabout will be.
So Ritter,
Okay, yeah, that's where
Ritter
I'm
plugs
thinking
into
too.
it, yeah.
But that's the intersection I don't think can handle. That thing's already kind of ugly when traffic piles into it.
Hence the roundabout, yeah.
Yes. But that's why I say I want to make sure it comes faster than anything else does in the event we lose.
Yep, it's fully approved, fully funded. They've bid it to contractors. They'll start in the spring,
All right,
maybe
I'll-
sooner.
I just want clarification on that, but I'm still against it.
Can I get it one more time? Did you say there has been a traffic study, like counting the cars and do they actually, are they,
The demand is projected.
It's forecast.
so we have no idea once all the construction at 5600 and people are used to the roads, how much traffic there's gonna be. The other day, I was standing in front of my house and there was screeching of brakes right there at the intersection of 1400 or 1500 in Ritter. It's scary. It's scary, the traffic already. And I'm just thinking that's a lot more people to take on our street. But yeah, it's already scary. There's a lot of near misses, people flying up Ritter and then they turn around in my driveway or their driveways because they missed 1500 and they meant to go down. And so there's a lot of confusion up there still. And once, the traffic, it'll never hold the traffic. No way. Should have thought of this before we widened Ritter Drive the last time. Should have widened it a little bit more probably. If we're gonna do this kind of thing.
Now I know that there was an email that we had received.
Ms.
Or
Carey's
was it-
here, yeah.
I showed up, it was in case I didn't make it.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that voice was heard too.
So I can address some of the questions if we're ready for that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I guess, do you want to close the public hearing and then I'll address it? Or do you want to keep it open for?
Okay, Mr. Gacy, did you want to make a comment?
It's Gracie.
Gracie's?
That's fine.
Pardon me.
Just don't call me late to dinner. That's what my dad said. I just have one question. Brandon, what's your opinion as to how would it affect my property if I went along with this new designation? What's the pros and cons? That's my only question.
Sure.
Okay.
So if we're finished, I can answer everything.
Just have one question. What's the height of the townhouse?
For this specific project, we haven't done the architecture yet. I would say that on average, they're between 33 and 38 feet. From
One or
other
two
projects that
level,
we
I guess is the best way to ask you.
Oftentimes we do a mix between 3 and 2 story.
That would always be more than one.
So the potential is for 3-story,
Yes.
okay?
That was one of my answers to the questions. So given the potential of the PD amendment and it being applicable to this project, currently that limits height to 3 stories or 35 feet. The current zoning in an R16 is going to most likely allow a 2-story home. So if you look at the 2-story homes that are prevalent in the area, especially newer ones that are getting built, they're anywhere from 24 to 29 feet. So the difference between a 35-foot townhome and a two-story single-family home,
about 6 feet.
there's a difference, but it's not tremendous.
Okay. There are a couple of questions, and I know that this is not a site plan, obviously. One of my concerns has been, I want to be able to have, there's a comparison between if we keep R6, R16, those homes like Coleman Farms, they're running anywhere from 550 to 800,000. Could you forecast for a townhome, what might that cost? Because that's really a crux here as far as being able to attract and have opportunities for people for housing. That's a concern for me, as is the concern of the additional traffic. But I know that you don't have a sales number as to what they're going to sell for, but a ish or a guesstimate.
Our goal is always to have it at a price point that makes sense. We would hope to have these in the 4s starting, and then, as people, if they want to upgrade or do anything on the interior, then they would be able to.
Okay. Because I want to see people have opportunities.
Right.
Afford.
It's virtually impossible for my kids to afford a home now. And to have, a leg up to have an opportunity. And there's other issues that we can discuss later, but those are some of the key things that I'm most interested in as we consider this moving forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Luke.
Yeah.
With your traffic study, did you guys even look at the 1,800, 5,600 projects in the next 5 years when they're completed, of the amount of traffic that's coming into Hill Air Force Base that will be coming onto the frontage road and River Drive?
That wasn't anticipated. I actually didn't know about those projects,
Those projects
until
have been
these
in-
have been
Those projects
mentioned
have been
tonight.
involved for 10 years.
Sure. I apologize. I just didn't know about them. So no, we did not anticipate those
Yeah.
as part of this traffic study.
So the traffic study included the demand projected by Wasatch Front Regional Council's demand model.
Right.
That demand model does take into consideration those projects.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to answer, should we close the?
Sure, and then we can go ahead and.
Okay. If,
One more comment.
okay,
I'm just saying that if those things are in the 400s, they cost more than my home. So that's not affordable housing. That's not bringing in more young couples. Who can afford that? No young couple can afford 400 and something thousand when they can go down the street and get one of those R8 ones for 500 and something. May as well just upgrade. Like, these are not affordable housing, not by any means. These aren't like the affordable housing we have in Ogden that I'm in all the time for my line of work. This is not affordable housing. This is high-end 3-story townhomes to bring in the biggest bang for your buck. That's my opinion on it anyway.
thank you. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, we would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The public hearing is now closed. As far as answering any questions that are addressing
Sure.
any of those questions, please.
I think we've talked about a few of them. The height is a concern. I think, as I mentioned, the R16 zone currently has a height limitation of 35 feet. So although if you looked at a single family home that's being built today in the adjacent area, it's not 35 feet, but the current zone allows for 35 feet if they would want to do something like that. We talked a lot about traffic. The traffic is always a big concern. And I'll kind of dovetail that with one of the other questions, comments, not questions, and that is, I look as if I'm promoting this. I'm not promoting anything. My job is to make a recommendation, as you know, and my recommendation has to be a yes or a no. And I try to make it off of objective-based standards. There's a lot of opinions. You all have your opinions. I have my own opinions. The public has theirs. But in order to approach this correctly, we try to base it on objective standards. And in the case of the traffic, it will be an increase to what's currently there today. It will be double or more of what would be there in the case of the current zoning. The question, that's what roads are for, right? They're to handle traffic. The question is, does your action tonight create a situation where the roads need modification to handle the kind of traffic that you would be placing on it by your decision? And I think objectively the answer to that, based on this study, would be no. I think that was all the questions. Affordability is subjective. Even our own moderate income housing plan doesn't define affordability. The state has tried to define affordability in the state housing plan. $400,000, believe it or not, is in the realm of affordability in their definition. But it's still a subjective, weird thing. When we're looking at, and we don't control that in terms of the price or any of those kind of things. The general intent of the moderate income housing plan and what the state has been pushing for in the last few years is trying to bring in more housing types of a different variety. And what's happened is townhomes have kind of filled that niche of the lower quartile of affordability. If you would look down the road, you're going to be 550 plus for the single family homes based on what's being built now. So I get it. Affordability is subjective. We're not going to define that, but I do think that from an objective standpoint, by providing this, by providing a higher number of units, supply and demand, right? By supplying a higher number of units that are of a different variety than what's currently being built in Riverdale, that does meet the objective of our moderate income housing.
All right, thank you. Mr. Martineau, another question, please. In your experience with these developments, one concern that I have is from a lending standpoint, because I have been a lender in the past, in my past career. There have been units. The last thing that I care to see is a development that comes in and becomes all rental units. Mm-hmm. That lowers in my opinion, it lowers the value of the development and the community because they have no ownership. And ownership is key here. I've seen stories where developers come in and develop a certain area, but then investors come in and buy the whole series. So they immediately become rental units. In your development experience, have you ever experienced that at all?
I haven't ever seen, or at least on our projects, we've never seen a institutional investor come in and buy up the whole community. But in this agreement that we've been going back and forth with city staff on, we're willing to at least implement a owner-occupied stipulation for a certain number of years so that we can have home ownership in this area. We know that that's important for every city, to have people own and have a sense of community. for where they live. And so that's something that we're willing to do and work with the city and bring that element into the development.
Appreciate that comment about the ownership agreement, say 2-3 years, something like that. But if the people sell it within 6 months, does that agreement carry over to the next buyer?
To my understanding, it would still be owner occupied for a certain number of years, whether someone buys it and sells it or whether they have it for the entire time.
If it was constructed and they bought it, no matter who's in it, the buyer has to agree to say, okay, 3 years owner occupied, whether I'm buying it from a current owner, it's still gonna extend for that 3 years to whoever's in it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yep, and that's where, you know, an HOA can come into effect. They can help regulate those things. We actually recently did this in a project for Ogden City. Well, not for Ogden City, but in Ogden City, where we built 26 townhomes. And same thing, we want owner occupied. We want this to be a project that uplifts the community and creates a sense of community.
So we're very careful with these types of restrictions. These are deed restrictions. That's what's in our agreement right now. That is in your packet. That would be a condition of approval. Right now it's 5 years. And so we haven't worked out the language of those deed restrictions. We want to be very careful to promote owner occupancy for that period of time without restricting life events. We don't want people to be in a pickle that they can't sell their house because of some deed restriction or some event that would cause recourse if they have a life event like a death or a relocation of a job or something like that. And so the state's actually becoming, these are becoming popular all over the state. And so the state has become really good at guidance on what a good deed restriction looks like to achieve the goal of occupancy for a period of time without really putting a hamper on a person. For instance, we give out loans through the RDA that require you to be occupied, require the home to be occupied for the period of the loan, which in some cases can be 30 years. And if you move, then you have to pay the loan back in full. So that's the kind of thing that the agreement currently has, is a 5-year deed restriction for owner occupancy. But after that deed restriction is up, then there's no longer any restriction. And so the second and third cycle of ownership can certainly be different. HOAs can restrict that kind of thing. It's very difficult to manage, but I've seen it done well.
Because I know that on the flip side with that, certain lending standards, I don't remember if it's conventional or FHA, limit the number of rentals within an area in order to be able to acquire funding for subsequent buyers. And so that can create headaches for potential buyers that want to have a home and to stay there.
Mm-hmm. And so as part of the PD ordinance that we just looked at requires increased level of disclosure and reporting on HOAs. That's a new thing that was being proposed in that. But even now, our current HOA rules require an HOA to disclose their CC&Rs at the time of platting. Those get reviewed and approved by the city attorney, and then they're required to renew every year with the city their HOA, as well as the state. The state just created a brand new HOA registry. So I think as these planned developments are becoming more popular because of the scarcity of land, they're getting more dense, HOAs are becoming more prominent, and so there's new regulations governing HOAs that are coming out, and I think that's good for the sake of the residents and the city.
Is this an HOA, if approved? Is that what this will be?
Yeah, yep.
Because the way you do it is, all the people have to do in an HOA is say, okay, present to me your trust deed. I want to see whose name's on the trust deed. That's all they got to do. Simple as that.
Right.
Any additional comments or discussion?
I don't have a question for Luke. You can sit down if,
Okay,
if
thank
anyone
you.
else does. I just want to make a comment because we don't get the public out here very often, and so it's awesome that you guys are here. And I don't love the comment of if you don't take our opinions into consideration, because we definitely take your opinions into consideration. I'm a second generation Riverdale citizen. My kid, my youngest or my oldest son just got married, had to move out of the city because he couldn't afford housing here in Riverdale. And I also grew up with the land where At Home and that whole community shopping area is, and we used to climb the trees and had a great rope swing. I understand the changes, but also as I sit on the planning commission, I also understand that we have to be able to balance out all of those things and wanting to keep that authenticity that's part of Riverdale with the changes that the state will mandate to us if we don't make some changes ourselves. And so as a planning commission, we talk a lot about these different types of housing developments and kind of the different types of, I don't remember the right word, but the townhouses and the big houses and the apartments with kind of that different mixed housing environment, so that we don't have the state come in and tell us what we can do with our land. So we have to kind of balance all of that out. It's not always fun, but I just wanted to let you know that your opinions are definitely heard and considered when we're making a decision. And I understand the whole dynamic changing Riverdale. We've seen a lot of it.
I grew up in Riverdale, moved away for a few years, so I could say I've been in Riverdale for probably about 60 plus years. And I grew up on a street called Cherry Drive. You know where that is? It's up as if you're going into the terrace. But I can appreciate your feelings, because there was a time not too long ago, a few years ago, that I came to this meeting, one of these meetings, and voiced my opinion before I was on the commission. And the opinion that I voiced was for those really old, decrepit mobile homes right across the street that have been ripped down. The reason why I voiced my opinion is because we bought one of those for my handicapped son, and he got booted out. So don't think that I'm not understanding what you're saying. I can appreciate that. I can really appreciate that. And so, luckily enough, my son's in a better situation, but we had no idea where he was going to go as a handicapped person. So I appreciate your comments. I can understand the feelings. I can understand where it comes from. But we're also under somewhat of a mandate by the state to do certain things. And it's like she said, we don't want the state telling us what to do with our land. We want to be able to do what we need to do to make it so that they can't come in and do that.
Likewise, I'm a lifer. I knew the Ritters, for which Ritter Drive was named. So
You win the prize.
the old Cinedome Theater was that's where my dad's alfalfa field was, and I played Army, and he'd yell at me for knocking the hay down. So I know, I've watched the development through Riverdale. And I've got a headache tonight from all of this, because I value you as fellow citizens, and I value your opinions. And I know what decisions we may make here tonight is going to either make you happy or make you mad at us. But it's all singular votes that determine the action that we take tonight. So I hate these decisions because they're hard, but they have to be, do they meet fair standards? Do they meet fair requirements? And that's all that we can hope for. But I am so grateful that you had an opinion to share with us tonight so that we can hopefully balance and make a good decision. So thank you. Commissioners, anything else to discuss?
Chair, before you call for a vote, I failed to answer Mr. Gracie's question.
Oh, thank
about
you.
what tonight's action would do to his land if it was approved. So I think it's important to mention that no matter what you all decide, it's a recommendation. You're an advisory board to the city council in terms of these types of legislative decisions. So the city council will make the final decision in a future, whether you recommend approval or denial, it'll still be up
There's
to
still
them.
secondary decision.
Yep. The land that is owned by Mr. Gracie would, if this was to be approved by City Council, would remain R16. The city can rezone property at their discretion, but not without notice. Mr. Gracie was noticed as an adjacent property owner to this land, not as a subject of the rezone. So if the city council was to consider adding Mr. Gracie's land to this, then he would have to be properly noticed. He can request that we do that. If that's what his wishes are, then he and I can have a conversation. And when we notice the city council meeting, we can notice that his land is included in the rezone. And so that would give him the ability to sell it as a more dense piece of property with the applied zoning. If none of that happens and it just stays the way it is, then a single-family home development can be built on it, or another proposal for rezone could be put forth by Mr. Gracie to rezone it to commercial to connect to his property to the west or something like that. So there's options.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, a proposal or a motion would be in order.
I'm going to do the first one and then
How to say it.
first
Okay.
I'm going to do the general plan amendment first, right?
All right.
General plan.
Lost on the paper. Sorry, I got my head all screwed up on this last one.
We need these numbered.
Pardon me?
We need these numbered.
I don't know where the general, oh, right there.
Is this it?
Yeah. So I propose a approval of the general plan amendment for 1526 West Ritter Drive.
So you got to read the whole thing,
Oh, that
the
whole
motion and the findings.
Oh, man. I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the city council for the general plan amendment as requested by Luke Martineau, J. Fisher Company representative and for Service Mortgage Corp., subject to the information found in the staff report dated December 23rd, 2025, and based on the following findings. The applicant has proceeded in accordance with the Utah Code Title 10, Chapter 20, and the applicable provisions of Riverdale City Code. The amendment is consistent with the housing and moderate income housing elements of the general plan. 3, the amendment constitutes an infill of redevelopment area served by existing public infrastructure, utilities, and transportation facilities. The general plan identifies such areas as appropriate locations for higher density residential development. The amendment is consistent with the general plan's transportation and mobility policies, including planned pedestrian and bicycle improvements along Ritter Drive, and supports land use patterns that promote efficient use of transportation infrastructure and multimodal access. And the amendment supports orderly growth, efficient use of land, and redevelopment with the city's existing urban area consistent with the long-term land use and infrastructure planning objectives of the general plan. The proposed amendment is harmonious with the overall character of existing development in the vicinity of the subject's property. The proposed amendment will not adversely affect adjacent property or the public health, safety, or welfare of the community. The developer owner is willing to enter into an agreement for the development of the land.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Then a second would be in order.
I'll second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Michelle, Ms. Maragoni, would you please poll the commissioners, please?
Commissioner Bowthorpe,
Reluctantly, yes.
Commissioner Francis,
Now, I'm gonna this is for the
For the
rezone.
rezone only.
No,
Not the
This
this
is
is not the
general
rezone. This is the general plan.
yes,
Only, yeah.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Henstra,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Next, we would have a motion for the rezone. Any discussion on that before we have the motion? Or let's have the motion and then a discussion.
yeah,
Can we have a question before the motion?
Sure.
yeah.
You talked about putting the red lines, zoning the red so they couldn't park on both sides of Ritter. Would that have to be on both sides? So it could just be on the townhome side and not on the residential property side?
That was just a discussion we had. That would be a function of the site plan review. So if this was to passing it to a site plan review, then we would look at that a bit closer. Setbacks from the front of the property into the property, that would be all considered as well. And so the closer the setback, probably the more we would be inclined to red curb that north side. There was a discussion again to do both sides, but I think that north side is the key side, especially with the drive approaches coming out. So I think that's something that can be considered as we look at the site plan review.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, commissioners, do we have a motion?
You guys on that. This one.
No, we're doing the zoning map.
So this is for the zoning change.
I'll read it, since I don't have my glasses, but I propose a zoning text amendment, RCC 10-22-PRUD. Motion for,
No, that's,
Wrong one.
wrong one?
Yep.
You need the J. Fisher Company's 1526 Ritter.
Oh, there it is, okay.
So you,
Oh, I have to read that?
which one are you doing? You're doing approval, modification?
Yeah,
You're doing
approval. Zoning map amendment, J.D. Fisher Company's 1526 West Ritter, motion for recommendation of approval. Motion, I move that we forwarded a positive recommendation to the city council for the zoning map amendment as required by Luke Martineau, J. Fisher Company, representative for Service Mortgage Corporation, subject to the information found in the staff report dated December 23rd, 2025, and based on the following findings. Findings. 1, the applicant has provided sufficient justification for the proposed amendment. 2, the proposed amendment is harmonious with the overall character of existing development in the vicinity of the subject property. 3, the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the general plan as amended. 4, the proposed amendment will not adversely affect adjacent property or public health, safety, or welfare of the community. 5, facilities and services intended to serve the subject property are adequate, including but not limited to roadways, parks, and recreation facilities, police and fire protection, schools, stormwater drainage systems, water supplies, and wastewater and refuse collection. 6, the developer/owner is willing to enter into an agreement for the development of the land.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? I have one question in discussion on this. Will the agreement for the development of the land, that's just broad and nebulous right now. That's not anything. Can we specify anything that we want included in that agreement?
Absolutely. It's not broad and nebulous. A draft copy was given to you in your packet for review. There has been some red lines back and forth, but they were mostly form and function. There was nothing material that changed what's in the packet. So if you would like to add to that, I think that's certainly in your purview.
Okay.
Based on objective standards.
Okay, I'm sure you'll correct me.
Okay.
In consideration of this, the one thing that I reluctantly am in favor for is the fact that this land agreement for the development of the land gives us an escape that if it doesn't carry out as to what is generally proposed here, that it reverts back to R16, because it doesn't leave a blank slate for anyone else to step in behind and put in something that we are not ready to consider. In amendment to that motion, I would offer for your consideration that it be included that there is a 5-year home ownership clause.
That's already in there.
That is in there?
Mm-hmm.
That's already in there.
Okay, I overlooked that. I just wanted to make sure that that was there. Because home ownership is, I'm reluctant to put anything in that is going to be rental because of the home ownership.
Right.
So you're making a proposal for the...
No, it stands as it is.
The other one, the first thing you said about the reverting
No,
back.
it's already
No,
in there.
that's what this
18 months.
permits.
Yeah.
That land use agreement will create an escape
Yeah.
if this doesn't follow through. So do we have a second then, or any further discussion?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Ms. Maragoni, will you poll the commissioners, please?
Commissioner Bothorpe,
Yes.
Commissioner Francis,
No.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Henstra,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton.
No.
Okay, the motion passes. We recommend or encourage you, because this is just a preliminary step. But there are other ears to be heard, that will hear your concerns. We feel like we have hopefully made a decision that is a recommendation that allows the property owners the rights to develop, and that that the current standards with the R16 permits the same height as what these proposed townhomes might have. But your voices are still
Either way.
valuable and of worth. So when that meeting is scheduled, we invite you back.
And may I add to that just real quick? So there'll be a couple of steps beyond this tonight. We've talked about the city council meeting. In addition to that, this concept site plan that you've seen tonight will come back to the planning commission for site plan approval if the zone change is approved. I would recommend to the developer, if you would be willing to organize some neighborhood discussions between now and the city council meeting, and we have 30 days to get this in front of the city council. So within that 30 days, if you and the neighborhood were willing to come together and discuss the proposal, that could help you understand some of the concerns that they have. And even if it is approved, then as you get to the site plan, you might be able to design elements that would address some of their concerns. So I would recommend that you all come together as a neighborhood and do that. The city will attend. We don't facilitate or get too much involved, but I think that's good practice. We don't require it, but it would be helpful for the city council to know that you've had that conversation and that you're looking at things to address some of the questions. Just a thought.
All right, thank you. Okay, next on our agenda would be consideration to approve preliminary borough subdivision, a two-lot residential subdivision located at 937 West, 4400 South, as requested by Bruce Burrows. Mr. Cooper.
Okay, we're on the home stretch. Ms. Marigoni, we have a slide for this. As was mentioned, this is a simple two-lot subdivision. It is taking an existing single-family home parcel. It has one structure on it, owned by Mr. Burrows and his wife. One more slide, please. There we go. So that's the parcel there, 937, 4400. He's proposing to basically cut this not quite in half, but to separate it into two lots. Go ahead with the next slide. You'll see that lot number 2 is the smaller of the two lots, and the existing home would remain on lot number 1. This is reviewed against our ordinance in terms of minimum lot size, setbacks, frontage width, utilities, standards, those kind of things. In addition to the new lot, he can't put the existing lot in jeopardy, meaning he can't create setbacks and minimum lot sizes and frontages that no longer comply. And so we looked at lot number 1 and lot number 2 in terms of the compliance of the subdivision standards. And we found that all of the standards that we have been met. This drawing doesn't actually show the amendments that we're waiting on, but they're not material. They're amendments to just put labels on things that weren't there and a few other minor issues. So go ahead with the slide. There we go.
Was that 2 of those?
What's that?
I don't know what it was doing.
So our objective standards include plat compliance. So as I mentioned, the configuration of the new lot, the subdivision ordinance standards with density, phasing, none of that applies here, but minimum lot size and width does. The street design, there is no new street here, so it makes it pretty easy. There is a water sewer connection, and he shows that on the plat. So we've reviewed that, and it's compliant to our standards. And then we have received sign off on the fire marshal. Public Works had a couple of comments. That's in the staff report. But again, it's being changed. And so your approval tonight would be subject to those changes. We'll make sure that happens. So pretty simple, 2 lots. Both lots are compliant. Mr. Burrows is anxious to get this subdivided. Single-family homes don't require a site plan per se, not like a residential development or a commercial. So when he submits for a building permit, he'll include a basic site plan that his new house, if you go back one, would be required to fit within that dashed line on lot 2. That dashed line is the setback. And so we'll review his building permit application to determine if his new house is within those lines. And if it is, then he'll be issued a building permit. He'll be able to build a new house, and then he'll do what he needs to with the existing home. So with that, we recommend that this preliminary subdivision plat is approved. Keep in mind that with the new changes in state code, you are the land use authority on residential subdivision plats. So this does not go to the city council. It's just your approval, your final action.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cooper? Any discussions regarding this? So should we make a motion then?
I make a motion for approval. I move that the Planning Commission approve the borough's preliminary subdivision application based on the findings of fact presented, finding that the application complies with all applicable objective land use regulations of the Riverdale City Code and Utah Code Title 10, Chapter 20, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, and authorize administrative approval of the final plat upon satisfaction of those conditions.
Okay, any discussions on the motion? Then a second would be in order.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Maragoni, would you poll the commissioners, please?
Commissioner Beaufort?
Yes.
Commissioner Francis?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes,
Commissioner Henstra? Yes. Commissioner Hilton?
Yes.
the motion passes. All right, thank you. Next, we would have any comments from the Planning Commission, city staff?
I propose a motion to adjourn.
There you go.
Okay. We have a second?
I second.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
To say no.
I know.
Because the only reason it changed my mind is that if we wanted it to be single